Welcome everyone to the Voice of Terminus show. I'm joined by Lexa. Say hello, Lex.
Hi, Lex.
Say hello, Josh.
Hello, Josh.
Ooh. And we've got Shy in the background, our wonderful mod for the show. Say hello, Shy.
Hello.
Shy will be gathering questions towards the end throughout the show, basically, for us to answer, that go unanswered throughout the show. If you have any questions, send her a DM in Twitch or mention her name, and she'll try and grab all those questions for you guys in chat for us to address towards the end. Today's show is about the Paladin. We're going to look at the Paladin class and where we could possibly take this to kind of add a bit of twist to the class in general. So I just want to reiterate that basically the archetype and subclass discussions that we're doing here are not to be taken literally by the sense of the meaning. We chose this wording for the simple reason it's better for people to connect with rather than coming up with some new unique name for these. So we're trying to find ways to mix up how these individual classes are approached throughout the game, and make each class uniquely different towards the others. So it's not your same old you pick your class, you pick your subclass later on down the road, and then you're done. It's more of a means where one class might have to find NPCs throughout the world to learn new abilities and whatnot, and others join some kind of guild, or others have to go on a lonesome, long enduring quest series to advance. And this is what we're kind of doing with these archetype and subclass theory craft discussions. So we'll get into the Pantheon description of the Paladin, and then Josh will take over and explain what he has put forward for us today. So once a cleric, the Paladin has a call transcending the customs of the cleric order. Led by her convictions, she sets off to carry out her own righteous judgment. And that's the description from VR's website, the official stance on it in a sense. And from that, guys, before we get into the good stuff, we do know that before all this, the Paladin was called the Crusader, and they've kind of melted both together. They've taken some of the cleric part of the Paladin and some of the Crusader part, which is basically sets off to carry out her own righteous judgment, is part of the Crusaders' description back then. So what's your take from listening to that? What does that say to you about the Paladin? We'll start off with you, Lex.
Of course, start with me. I'm trying so hard, guys. That's all I'm going to say. I'm just trying so hard. Okay. So to me, basically it means it's a warrior who has roots within worship. So it's in my mind's eye, what I see is someone who's a nice mix between cleric and warrior without being a copy and paste.
What about you, Josh?
Yeah, for me, I think that the Paladin has always struck me as a warrior against undead, or a warrior against demons, or anything that is not living, so to speak. They are the defenders and protectors against life, per se, and they use their faith to ensure that their God is channeled through them against these undead and anything that is not living. So in that way, they have their own unique blend of dealing with them.
Okay, so we've heard Alexa and Joshua's take on this. And my approach basically goes back to the medieval times, basically, and books and lore on the Paladin from outside of a game. The way I would love to see Paladins and how I actually picture them is they are more like the last stand of knights, you know, the protectors of the king or the queen, if you want. You know, they are the holy knights, the go-to guys. They're the best of the best. You know, they're above everybody else. They're there to protect their cities, their king, their queen, and they'll put their life on the line if it has to be. They're kind of like the unsung heroes in the sense, is basically how I've always pictured Paladins. And we have a mixed description here from VR, where they've taken the cleric side of things, and they've taken the crusading side of things as well. In the sense, a paladin would basically go out and fight for its church, for its religion, and it would carry out justice based on what the clergy would tell them to do. But in this sense, they've taken a little twist here, and they kind of carry out their own convictions and call their own righteous judgment. So they're that's how I basically see them. If you look at the Knights Templar, for instance, those are paladins, basically. You know, that's how I see them. And yeah, so this should be a very interesting discussion. Go on, Lex.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't paladins for Pantheon, at least the idea behind them is that they're clerics who are taking a more aggressive stance towards the Revenant?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's one of their tenets.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so
Ultimately.
it's actually kind of odd when you think about it, because with Pantheon, the paladins using that as the basis come off as a little aggressive, which is totally not what you think of when you think paladin. You know, usually they're just this isn't meant as an insult, but the goody
The Dungeons and Dragons version of it is obviously lawful good. You can't be any other type of class.
And that's where it's, you know, very interesting, the stance that VR have taken. And that's where, you know, you can still feel that hint of Crusader behind the Paladin. You know, they've basically gone and, you know, said, right, we're going to go with Paladin. Crusader's just way too confusing. You know, there's so much controversial discussions on what a Crusader should be, and you know, they decided to go back to the original sense of Paladin, but they've added that twist, and I respect that, and I actually find that very refreshing that they go that extra mile to keep that class in itself, back in its traditions, but adding a plot twist. You know, it's definitely very, very refreshing to see a class like that be turned into some kind of badass, if you will.
I wouldn't go that far.
Hey, Lex, we have an agreement.
I didn't say anything bad. I'm just saying we need to withhold our expectations a little bit.
Yeah. So
we're not talking about Dire Lords here.
Do we want to go into what Josh has prepared for this show? Josh, do you want to go and lead us in?
All right.
How you see us possibly branching out and creating some kind of altercations to the Paladin? How they could basically form themselves within the world of Terminus?
Yeah, well, when I had a look at the Paladins, I also didn't want to like too generic, but it is quite difficult with the Paladin because they are very narrow in their structure, in the way they see the world, and the way they are towards parties, etc. So I just came up with 4 types of subclasses or different branches that the Paladin could possibly take ultimately. And the first one is the Maester of Souls. I'll just give a brief description of each one as I'm going down them. So the Maester of Souls, he will basically use the souls of his enemies to empower himself. And if I just read it over here, enemies killed by this paladin release their souls, strengthening the paladin further in the fight. The strength of the Mesa is enhanced the more souls that he absorbs during the battle. A soul cage sits in the top left of the screen and fluctuates depending on the souls absorbed. This can range between 3 to 10 souls based on the abilities of the paladin and the items gained specific to the paladin, such as a lantern with a candle or a thurible. A thurible is obviously in the church. There's guys with the senses that they flick around. So that's the first one. So that is the Mace of Souls. The second one is the Defender of Light. This one is more based around healing as a paladin. But what he does is that he will use the damage against him to kind of like channel healing from damage that he takes ultimately. So the paladin's faith strengthens his armor and body, and each blow that he receives he can heal that way. So the third one is the Night Hunter. Don't slaughter me for these names. These are fairly early morning stuff, but nevertheless, the Night Hunter is basically your paladin that has a sworn enemy. So this is fairly generic, but against sworn enemies, the paladin comes into his own, cutting down the foes by channeling his holy wrath against them, using a body part of the rare subtype. So a subtype could be the undead or demons, etc. The paladin, along with glyphs and wards, strengthens weapons and armor against the subtypes. The paladin will always take 25% less damage against the subtype the paladin chooses. And that's the third one. And then the last one is really out there. Again, don't kill me. But this one is basically, let me find it quickly. It's called Strength of the Ancients. So on this one, the paladin uses I'll just read the description. Passed down through time, ancient armor and weapons are the only item needed by this paladin. The armor and weapon absorbed by magic of items found by the paladin empowers the items over time. Armor and weapons can be recast into the look the paladin likes, but this reduces the power of the pieces. So in this paladin, he will absorb items and increase the power of his armor over time, and he won't need for much else after that. And he uses this to enhance his abilities as well. Yeah, so what do you guys think so far on these subclasses?
I gotta say that I always enjoy listening to Josh's subclass ideas because they're all very unique and stuff. But I'm like, maybe that could work. You know, granted, a lot of class design still requires tweaks, no matter how good it sounds. Yeah. But it would be something that I'm sitting here in the back of my head going, as a programmer, how would I code that? How would that be? I think that'd be kind of fun. Maybe this won't work, but if we twist it like this, that would be interesting. So
there's definitely very interesting ways to go about it, and I've talked to Josh about this, before we went live as well. I can even see this being some kind of aura as well. Different auras that the paladin can go out and find by a means of maybe you have maybe there's 4 paladins in the world that or however many they want to go
paladin
for.
Sects, let's put it that way.
Out there in the world where they can go and learn about these auras, and it's something that you could basically do where you could maybe go out there and obtain the basic knowledge of these 4 different subclasses, or whatever you want to call it, or auras. We'll go with auras in this case.
Yeah.
And you could most probably learn 2 to the max, and have the other ones basically in their basic form. So it's definitely very interesting. I do like the Strength of Ancients. That's my favourite. If I had to choose one, that would be my favourite. And I'm sure we're going to get into a lot of speculation and theory crafting as we go through this. So yeah, really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we just discuss, let's go with the first one, the Mace of Souls. The Mace of Souls. Okay. Again, another generic part of the Paladins would be the mounts that Paladins would get. Now, I know that many games or MMOs out there actually have the various mounts, but it would be nice for the mounts to actually benefit the Paladin as well in some way. So if we just have a look at the mounts for each one of these guys. So the Mace of Souls, I've said that the mount is ethereal, with glowing blue eyes. Wisps of ghostly matter flow off the horse when running from the hooves, neck, and eyes. Minimal armor is shown on the horse with a translucent saddle and bridle in place. With the mount, you start with an extra soul of power in the fight, when you start fighting. So it's graphically nearly impossible, I guess, to have mounted fighting in MMOs. I mean, it's really something that we don't want to do. But I think in EverQuest 2, they were pretty clever in still being able to get the mount bonuses, even though you were in a fight. So you didn't really dismount. I don't know how you'd incorporate it. Do you think that's an idea or not?
I think the problem with MMOs and mounted combat is that no one's really tried to do it right. It's a lot of work. It's a brand new system. It's kind of like with Star Wars: The Old Republic and how they wanted to make combat more realistic, with the blocking and the weapons actually hitting and sparking and such. They spent millions of dollars on that because they wanted to get it right. And that's why no one's really done mounted combat right. They've always done like EverQuest 2, where it's like you're on your mount, you're in combat, it's still there, but you're just poofed off of it. It's the lazy way out, basically.
So before we, carry on with these mounts, I want to quickly go back to the Mace of Souls in general, because one thing that kind of sticks out to me is him harnessing souls, basically. He could harness different souls, different types of souls. It's almost necro-like.
It is
in a sense, and I mean it's definitely very crude and dark, and it definitely gives a dark shimmer on what a paladin usually is, and it does fit the crusading aspect of what the paladin previously would be. I don't know if it's going too close towards a necro, but I do like the idea of him harnessing the souls basically and strengthening himself. But one twist I would like to give him for that, though, is the harnessing of souls basically would be something that he uses, that he basically reflects into a beneficial ability or buff for the group. To kind of give him that righteousness, that holiness of what a paladin still is meant to be perceived as. He's a good guy. This would be the perfect or a cool way to approach the Dire Lord in that sense, in the description that you've given. So there's definitely room for twists on this, and I don't know how other people might perceive it. I like it though. Him harnessing souls, because we do know that paladins generally use arcane. They use arcane magics and everything. So it's kind of fitting that he would be able to harness, the undead and whatnot. And you could even go one further, that basically the weapon that he has he could maybe get a buff from summoner or an enchanter or whatever that gives him the ability to harness other souls rather than just the undead.
Another way of looking at the soul situation is that the Paladin is a conduit for the souls to go up to heaven, type of thing. He becomes that spiritual conduit for souls
Almost
to pass
like,
to the afterlife. So
it could almost twist that into when he slays an enemy, he absorbs their soul to kind of purify it.
yeah, exactly.
You know, that kind of, hey, look at that, Froggy's right on the same line as me. Great minds, all I'm going to say.
Yeah, definitely.
Spending too much time together.
It's like, you know, taking them into the light.
Correct. And what, as you say, maybe the souls are used in more of a passive situation rather than offensive situation.
And I gotta say, out of all of them, that Maester of Souls is the only one that does really appeal to me and my preferences. As a person who is primarily focused on the Dire Lord, that one would make me consider having the name Paladin attached to mine.
Yeah.
And, you know, if we go through the, you know, these different types, you can almost even feel a sense of, you know, where they're belonging in a group. You know, so I see the Maester of Souls in the AoE aspect, in the supporting aspect, you know, for gathering these souls and giving a buff towards the group, you know, cleansing the evil souls and sending them up to heaven, and in combat. And when I see the Defender of Light, for instance, you know, regularly shining his armor and weapon, the Paladin glows and reflects in the dimmest of light. The cloth supporting the armor is neat and fairly made. You know, the brief description that we've been given. I kind of see that in a more fully supporting role.
Yes.
You know, so it's definitely a cool way to define these guys and put them in different categories, and it makes for a unique play style as well for each Paladin, because, you know, this is the reason why we do these, or are doing these archetype and subclass shows, because, you know, we would love to see, you know, the Lex's Paladin be different than Josh's Paladin, and again be different than Janila's Paladin, and you know, and everybody else in chat as well. But still, to the sense, you're a Paladin, but we've all chosen different paths to go, and different and chosen to take on different roles, because, you know, we've copied and pasted in the last 2 decades the MMOs that have had all these atypical classes. They're the same old of the same old of the same old, with just a few new spells, or, you know, name changes to the spells. But there's nothing really new about these classes, and they all play the same.
Well, I mean, when you look at a lot of the games, if you were to look in, like, say, chronological order, it's not that people aren't trying different things. It's that they want the atypical class to draw in the people that are a fan of it, but then they feel the need to not be so blatantly copy and paste of another game. So they'll shoehorn something in there that really doesn't make any sense, like, at all.
Yeah.
You know, for instance, I played a game where a Paladin, who was a friend of mine, it wasn't me, they had the ability. They had the ability to use a void ability, where you place it down on the ground and it sucked all your enemies into it. And I'm just like, how in any reality does that ever make any kind of sense? You know, I was just like, okay, no. But Paladin is the only one that I've seen that. I've seen it with almost every class. Yeah.
I find Paladins extremely difficult to differ ultimately, and change, so that people don't come away with some sort of disbelief, going, that's not what a Paladin is, type of thing.
Yeah.
because everybody has this thought in their mind to exactly what a paladin is in their minds, i.e. defender, X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's extremely difficult.
I mean,
class.
The thing is, the paladin's always been identified with a cleric and a warrior, a mix of the two. And the thing that sticks out to me, and why I've always been a strong advocate against this, especially for Pantheon, is once a cleric, he isn't anymore. He's left. He's moved on. He's taken on a new role. He's basically left the clergy to go off, and with that little twist at the end, to carry out their own righteous judgment. So technically, for me, they can still have some sense of abilities to help support a healer in the group, but it should be very minimal, at least very minimal. Resurrecting, for instance, that should be something that should be taken away from a paladin, because they've left that order. Resurrecting takes a lot of skill and takes a lot of energy off of you, and
a lot of devotion to your deities.
Exactly. So that's one thing that's always kind of bugged me when looking at past games with the paladin class. It's like there's no effort put into it anymore. When designing these classes and taking that risk of adding a twist to it, and going, hey, there's actually room to go and change this around, and that's one of the things that that's why I'm a strong advocate for exploring new ways to define these classes. I applaud VR again for taking that risk in doing so, because it's definitely not easy. A lot of people have, like you said, Josh and Lex, a lot of people have their connection to their classes. I myself, when I see Druid, it's the Warden from EverQuest 2. That's how I kind of picture my Druid. But I'm open for new ways to explore that class and bring it into a new era, because again, there's no rule book saying class like this has to be like that. It has to be the same as the past 20. There's no written law to it feels almost like these companies, when they go and design their MMOs, it's almost a lack of devotion towards it. A bit of laziness.
I think it's the last place that they actually go when they come to designing the MMO. They want to get everything done first, the world building, the this, the that, and then it's an afterthought to take the classes into a new direction, in my mind as well.
Yep.
Well, see, it's not often I'm defending the industry, but I'm going to this time, because when you look at a paladin really is just a very spiritual style of warrior. When you think spiritual, you think one of the healer classes. It's just what we've been conditioned to think. The best one that fits, because plate armor, you go back to your D&D days, clerics and plate armor, so you automatically link your paladin to a cleric. So if this is a cleric, but he's more of a fighter, how do you make him different? It's not an easy task. Granted, everybody and their grandmother can come up with 50 ideas, and I guarantee you at least 3 of them are going to be good. But the problem is that when you're making a game, you have to try something, decide if you're going to scrap it or if you're going to keep it. Then you add something else. You have to see how everything you've added works with everything else you've already added, and how things have to change to keep things moderately, decently balanced. But I mean, when you think of all the work that goes into that, doing it completely original, there's every reason to copy and paste.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you save a lot of design hours and work hours. Sometimes you just don't have a choice.
Yeah, we're not faulting them at it. It's just it's been done over and over again. And it's there's nothing wrong with trying something new. and
Right.
trying to expand on what these classes can be and should be.
Right.
You know, we're all about expanding and new stuff. So why not go that extra mile with classes as well? Anyway, let's go and move on. And you want to go and carry on quickly with the mounts before we go into the individual, or do you want to go on to the next class?
I was thinking, let's just let's do the mounts. Let's do that then. Okay. All right. So the next mount. So I've just basically created some flavors per subclass. So the next one is the Defender of Light. The mount is pure, muscular, and regal, standing tall, and is mostly white. Gold and other luxurious metals make up the armor, saddle, and bridle for the mount. Finally, a faint gleam radiates from the mount's body. All healing done by the Paladin increases by 5% with the mount up. Right, so that is just purity and regalness, and really looks nice. The Night Hunter. The mount is dark black in appearance and has metallic spikes as armor over its body. The glyphs and wards are etched into the armor and saddle of the mount, and froth, dark substances drip from the mouth randomly. Finally, when the subtype is chosen, when the subtype of chosen monster is close by, the glyphs and wards glow slightly. All subtype of the monster takes 5% more damage with the mount up.
That sounds like a
nightmare.
A very dangerous mount. You know, a horse or whatever you don't want to get close to. It's frothing from the mouth.
It'll take your eye out with one of its spikes.
It's frothing from the mouth and it's glowing. It's gonna explode.
Run away!
And then the last one is the Strength of the Ancients. The mount is mechanically crafted by dwarves using ancient materials found deep in the earth. They recognize the sacrifice and help the paladins have made over time, and have gifted such mounts to paladins of the subclass. The mount is shiny and has cogs for joints. Its nostrils emit steam, and if you look closely into the mouth of the mount, a raging fire can be seen in its belly. Defense is enhanced by 5% with this mount up. Yes, a clockwork mount. It is something different.
It's kind of funny because there's, I don't know what it is, but something made me think of Paladin using his mount as a pet.
Mm.
You know, granted, I'm not saying this is a good idea.
Yeah.
No.
But no. My brain got on that rail.
There's maybe, you know, a way to, you know, if something like this, you know, were to be used or formatted in some kind of form, you know, you don't necessarily have to go with the mount. This could be some kind of unique buff that you can, you know, you would pick what kind of direction you want to go, and then that's kind of like your unique buff that you have, something that defines your role within a group. So instead of having a mount, because I mean, like Lex said, it's definitely very hard to bring up the combat aspect of things with mounts. And to be honest with you, these mounts pretty scary for a paladin.
For a paladin, yeah,
you know,
it's true. It's true. I must admit, I wouldn't have half of them as mounts, to be quite honest.
I could just see a paladin now seeing his mount for the first time, going, "I am not getting on that thing."
I would rather see, basically, you know, I would prefer, instead of having a mount, because it's been done over and over again.
Yeah, exactly.
It be some kind of buff that
it's a
he
standard,
has.
Isn't it?
It's, you know, it's a standard. Why does he have to have a mount? He doesn't. It's a paladin. He's strong. He's righteous. He's greatness. So give him a buff that defines that.
Yeah.
You know, a buff of leadership. Something, you know, where he throws his sword in the air like He-Man, and boom, an aura of a glowing yellow light.
Okay, that's worse.
Goes around him, and you see his basically his body enlarged kind of thing. Like, you know, he's a beacon of light that buffs the group, that helps the group, provides a group with some kind of ability, like you've mentioned, maybe an increase to healing, or you know, some subtype of monster taking more damage, or you know, the defenses are enhanced. So
it could be something as simple as maybe a relic from each subclass. So you might have some sort of a soul gem that you insert into your sword, for instance. And your sword becomes a soul flavor type of thing, with the souls rotating around the blade type of thing. Or, you know, you have 4 different types of items you can gain as a paladin that can enhance your weapons or enhance your armor type of thing. That is unique, like the mounts, so to speak, that give additional bonuses to your thing, but fit in more with the paladin itself. So that could also work.
Yeah, definitely. So if we go and look back at these 4 types of paths, auras, whatever you want to call it, however you want to, you know, justify it for yourself. What roles do you see these guys, these different abilities or paths, whatever you know? What's their roles within a group?
Abilities, basically.
What's the roles they have?
Okay. Well, we're definitely gonna I would say with the Maester of Souls, they are going to definitely be AoE type paladins, and the Defenders of Light could also be AoE type paladins, but direct and close, but with healing magic. Night Hunters could have dot effects on the actual mobs. But the roles they would play is purely defensive for the most part, with some of them being offensive. But ultimately, their abilities are going to be protection of the group itself. So, yeah. So the one thing I also would say that the abilities of the various classes is also something that is also tough to come up with.
Well, do you have anything for us in that direction?
Well, if we just start off with the Maester of Souls, Soul Harvest comes to mind, where you're harvesting the souls, and basically the souls aren't harvested all the time, but you can have them at 100% harvested with this ability. And every time you absorb a soul, the strength of the paladin increases. So you could do that. The Blight of Souls is another ability where the paladin can use the soul to haunt enemies and decreasing the number of harvested souls, but this would decrease the number of harvested souls the paladin will have. The soul lasts for about 30 seconds before vanishing into the ether. The soul haunts a random enemy, chills them in the process. The attacks are halved, and the mob is weakened with a 2% reduction in damage.
So you definitely gave it some thought, where it's not all beneficial. You know, you know, there's that balance, that even balance of, you know, hey, you got this cool spell, but you know, there's going to be some kind of balancing put into it, like, you know, with the Blight of Souls, where he goes out and haunts a random enemy and stuns him, chills him, or whatever.
Correct.
Whereas attacks then get weakened or halved, basically, and
against the group.
Against the group, exactly, and that's actually a reasonable, decent spell to have. I like it. What do you think, Lex?
I agree.
Lex is sidetracked.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me just answer. So then the last ability that I've thought of for the Mace of Souls is something called You Shall Be Judged. And basically the Paladin may use a soul to peer deep into the enemy's own soul to see whether the enemy is worthy of mercy. They never are. So the enemy has a bleed dot on him. They start off with a bleed dot, and the dot lasts for about 60 seconds. The bleed causes 2% damage per 6 seconds. And on top of that, the enemy feels a crushing weight on their soul, and they feel despair, not being able to do anything for 30 seconds. So, this again is quite offensive, a quite offensive base ability.
So, So basically, I presume that you've gone, for all these 4 paths or auras or whatever you want to call it. You've all given them 3 unique abilities, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's actually a pretty neat way to approach maybe the Paladin class and give it something different, because on our last show with the Druid we looked at other things, other aspects with the Monk as well, and this is actually pretty refreshing to see. I could picture the Paladin basically picking a path he wants to take, where he gets 3 unique abilities that have a value for the group. And I'm pretty sure, like with all the other class discussions we've done, Josh, you've taken into account, obviously, that they're all beneficial and unique in their own way, and they offer some kind of use to the group. Because that's another thing that's basically always going to be a concern later on down the road, is when it comes to advancing your spells and we get AA trees, we get skill trees, that half the stuff in those trees is useless. Yeah. Pointless for that class.
Well, this is the thing, and the one thing that I've always tried to incorporate within these abilities is that they are percentage based and not fixed amount based, because by the time you get to level 50, those fixed amounts are worth nothing ultimately when they do damage to the mob or what you're doing for your group, that type of thing. So percentage based is always going to increase with the strength of any class. Even at level 50, you're going to be having it in line with the damage that you're doing. So yeah, so those are the 3 abilities for the Maester of Souls.
And very suiting.
Very much so. It's like I want to be a good guy, but I want to be a Dire Lord class.
Yeah, it's like I still want to do that little bit of badness. I want to still go out and
lay waste to my enemies.
Call judgment myself. I don't want to rely on other people to tell me that he's a bad guy or he's a good guy. I'll judge this myself.
I'll walk the line.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the judge, jury, and executor. Yeah, executioner. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the Defender of Light. This is where he basically is the meat shield of the group and uses that meat shieldness to heal the group ultimately. So the first ability I thought of was fairly basic. Was the armor is increased by 1% every 10 seconds to a maximum of 10% in total while in battle. This has a duration of 60 seconds and lasts to the end of the battle. So you'd have to just recast it to try and get that buff going again. And this will obviously strengthen the Paladin in the front to absorb more damage over time. The second ability is called Pulse of Faith, and this is probably the first healing type spell or ability that the Paladin will have. So every 6 seconds, the armor is enforced, and this is an ability that enhances or is used in conjunction with the enforce ability. So every 6 seconds, the armor is enforced. A pulse of healing emits from the Paladin. This heals everyone for 2% of their health within a 5-meter radius. Mm-hmm. And then as you increase in the ability strength through the levels, so maybe a level 2 Pulse of Faith, the radius may increase slightly, and then every 30 seconds a random dot is removed from an ally and the Paladin. And then the third level would be a random dot is removed from all allies and the Paladin. So you might have a few dots on you and you might get lucky and the one dot will be removed, but at least this is something that is a sort of a passive type ability that will aid the group by removing these dots and also healing everybody as well.
For me, though, with the healing, I would kind of like, this is my personal reference, so don't take it my word. But for me, we have roles of healers, we have roles of tanks, we have roles of mages, we have roles of scouts, and that's where their respected paths should be. I personally would see the Defender of Light with the Pulse of Faith be something where he enhances the healer's abilities rather than throwing out a heal himself.
The only issue I have with that is that what happens if you don't have a healer in the group?
Well, you're not going to do anything, are you?
You're going to be LFG for healer.
Yeah.
Well, it's almost like if that were a melee class, it's almost like they'd be a mixture of like shaman style buffs with the bard, only instead of being linked to abilities in terms of songs, you could maybe trigger them by combos or something like that, right? Yeah. And it would be a different twist where, the bards never really had anything else that's even remotely like it, which is one of the reasons why I kind of like them. But anyway, to get something similar, you could essentially take this theoretical subclass and turn it into something very much akin to the bard and be like another one of these ultimate group helper kind of thing. It's like massive utility.
Yeah, that's why I definitely see the Defender of Light, being a meat shield, like you said, but bringing a lot of benefits to a group.
Yeah.
When it comes to total buffness, you could even, instead of advancing the healers heals or something like that, you could even do like a damage reduction instead. So you take less damage from the encounters within a certain radius. As a compensation rather than healing, because for me, I'm still on the fence when it comes to the Paladin, but that's and healing. He should be able to heal himself maybe to some point. That's maybe something that he's been able to keep from the clergy, because of years of using those spells and mastering this. He could heal himself. But when it comes to the group, I don't know. But I still like it. It's still a really good idea. So let's go and move on to the next one. The next spell, the final one.
Yeah. All right. So the last one would be Shield of Reflection. So this is, if the Paladin wields a shield, each blow creates feedback on the enemy, causing weakness and reducing the damage done by 10%. Further to this, every 30 seconds, the shield emits a bright light with a 33% chance to blind the enemy. The enemy has a 75% chance then to land a blow going forward. And then with every increase in power of this type of ability, that chance to land a blow decreases with the power of the Paladin increasing, ultimately. So, yeah, a blinding type of an ability against its foes.
All I'm going to say is that if it works like EQ1, hell no. I hated that when you blind them, and then the tank takes one step back, not realizing that it was blinded, and it just takes off in a direction. It's like, what happened? Oh, sorry, I hit it with flashing light.
Yeah, no, that's true. So that is the Defender of Light's abilities that I thought of. The Night Hunter now. This is against sworn enemies now, where they choose a subtype. So the first ability is sworn enemy. Choose a sworn subtype of enemy. The enemy always... must have been drunk when I was writing this. The enemy always do 25% less damage against the Paladin and take 25% more damage. And I'm thinking that would only be against the Paladin. And then maybe at 20 levels more, they can choose another subtype. And then maybe at level 50, they can choose a final subtype of enemy. So they could probably have 3 subtypes ultimately that they can fight against. So they're increasing their pool of sworn enemies, so to speak.
That's actually a pretty cool spell to have. And if this was something, and they give the option to go back to the synergy or whatever to basically with a high cost obviously involved, obviously it's not something you can just go, I want to go and change this one out, change that one out, change that one out. I could see this would be a very useful ability to have as a paladin, especially in a night, in that particular class, because that's a spell that's never going to be obsolete.
No.
So when the game grows and you go and advance out into new areas, new zones, new dungeons, and you learn, you encounter new mobs. You can maybe there's some way to add some kind of, like similar to the perception or insight, where the paladin or the Night Hunter paladin has to kind of explore the zone and learn about the different mobs out there, to be able to then go and say, hey, I want to change out the spell version number 2. I want to switch out those 2 encounters. He pays whatever the equivalent's going to be for him to do that. Maybe some kind of buff where he has some lesser defensive abilities or something like that for a period of time, as a cost, rather than just go in there paying a bit of plat to go and change out his spells or whatever. I think that's pretty cool, and I could see something like this being used often as well. And if we look back at the other 2, there's no conflicting, there's no better. There's none. Not one of them's better than the other. They all have that usefulness.
Yeah, definitely. And the nice thing about the sworn enemies type as well is that there's always going to be some sort of a new subclass or subtype of mob that'll come through expansions and that type of thing. So the paladin's always going to be beneficial in certain situations. And they don't have to say, oh, well, I don't have any mobs like this at this high level. Well, I need to change my sworn enemy now all of a sudden. So yeah, I can see it working that way. Right.
So the next one?
The next one is called Infuse Holy Wrath. So the Paladin traces a glyph on his weapon, empowering it against the subtype. Apart from the 25% additional damage, the Holy Glyph burns the enemy with Holy Fire, doing 2% additional holy damage every 6 seconds. The weapon is empowered for 1 hour. So this will just basically burn the enemy ultimately and take down the mobs a bit quicker that way.
I can see it forest fire.
Let's say it's almost like adding a proc to your weapon.
Yeah, exactly. Empowering the weapon, so to speak.
And again, this is still a very unique spell, and this could even be something where the Paladin actually requires a item to put into that weapon. So it's not just a spell you click. You've got this Infuse Holy Wrath spell going for an hour. You actually have to consume something to be able to use that spell, or have something on your persons at all times to be able to use this spell.
Yeah, I can see that actually working. As you say, it's you might have to create certain, I don't know, gems or something like that with the essence of your sub-type creature in those gems, which you can insert into your weapons in order to use this. It might not be hard to make, though, ultimately. Yeah. So, what about special essences looted off the mobs themselves? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So each creature will drop specific items that might be rare to find, but kill enough of them and you'll have enough resources to empower your weapon for a while.
Yeah, it could be something like, the individual mobs drop, and if you need a certain essence or whatever from a certain mob, you have to go out and kill them.
Correct.
I mean, and that's another time sink as well. Another means to keep you distracted from reaching the end game content and rushing forward. It gives you something to do in your downtime when your friends ain't on. You can go and make sure you got enough essences so that you can utilize these spells. Yeah, definitely.
And it also creates I would say a currency as well. That people find these essences, they can sell them to paladins ultimately. So the last one I've got here is the Ward of Purity. The Paladin traces the ward on his armor. The ward lasts for 1 hour, and the Paladin reduces the negative effects of the subtype against the Paladin by 50% in effectiveness and duration. So what this is that, for instance, if you have a ghoul that might have chill touch or something like that, that might slow somebody down over time on each hit that it makes, the Paladin's hardly going to be affected by the subtype's abilities in the fight, and which is great ultimately, I think.
Yeah, definitely. The Night Hunter, has a lot of utility, a lot of benefits for being in a group, and he also has a benefit for being a supportive tank. If the main tank gets knocked down or whatever, or the group's in a bit of trouble, he can step up with some of these spells and take over for a short duration, and help the group while we all gather. The people gather themselves and get situated again, and try and check what's going on in the situation. So yeah, it's definitely really cool concept, man. Yeah,
cool. And then the last one, Strength of the Ancients. So the first ability I've got here is Absorb Magic. The Paladin focuses his prayers on the items and uses these prayers to empower the weapons and armor. Depending on the rarity of the found item and the type of item, a base percentage is added to the resistance armor or the rating damage. The resistance or rating, or armor rating or damage rating of the Paladin's items. This can vary between 0.1% to 5% depending on the item. The level difference also affects the percentage gained, and should the level differ more than 5 levels, no bonus can be gained from magical items. So basically, this is where there's an absorbed magic type of ability. Is basically, it's the Paladin's main ability to take magical items and absorb the magic from that and enhance the sword or not sword, or weapon or armor of the actual Paladin itself.
See, I like this ability for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
It essentially takes items out of the economy.
Yeah.
You know, so you got junk items that nobody in your group wants. You basically say, "Here, Mr. Paladin, chomp away, suck it up, whatever you want to do." And let's assume it just takes magic, doesn't destroy the item.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you can take the remaining non-magical whatever that remains, give it to a crafter to break down.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you're serving a dual purpose here with one single ability of one class, you know. Plus,
exactly.
Everyone along the line benefits. Even the game as a whole benefits simply because less items in the world that are junk, you know, things get a little less bloated and crazy in the economy.
And they hold a dual functionality as well. You know, it's not just an item that one person is going to consume, destroy, trash, whatever, transmute, and you know it's gone. He absorbs the magic from that item, and then he can basically give it back to that person. They bring it to a crafter. You know, they can then have it melted down into maybe some kind of metal that they can use to enhance weapons and armor and such, and so forth. So yeah, it's definitely a lot of usage for this spell.
Yeah, definitely. I think it really benefits the game, as Lex says as well. The next ability is Call of the Ancients. So the Paladin calls forth a holy shade of ancient power. These shades are the previous owners linked to the sword and armor. The shade has a hit point pool of 50% and a strength of 50% of the Paladin's. The shade is controlled by the Paladin and attacks upon command. The shade can channel damage dealt and heal the Paladin at the same time. So it's kind of a pet.
So for me, I like the general idea of the spell, but I don't like the fact that it can be controlled. I would like to see it kind of like Joppa mentioned with, I think it was the Ranger, where he can call upon certain animals, basically in some point, but you don't have any control of it. It rushes forward, it does its business, and it disappears. That's how I kind of would see this spell being used. And Call of the Ancients, like it's a spell you cast. It's like because I mean it's Call of the Ancients. It sounds like it sounds like the last resort. This is our last chance. This is our chance to either run away or to down the encounter. We're going to call upon all the powers we've possibly got as a Paladin, call the Ancients, and then these shadows come out, or these shades come out, rush the encounter, do their business, and they move on.
Well, I originally had the spell that you didn't have control over it. But then I thought to myself, would it be a good thing for the Paladin to actually Sana your healer was being swamped by 2 or 3 guys? Then he could at least control the shade to attack one of those 3 guys instead of the person who he was attacking. So that was my reasoning behind the command, or being under the command. But I totally agree with you. I mean, my original thought was the shade just attacks or whoever basically against them.
See, I think it's a really, again, a great foundation. Just minor tweaks, like shade has a bit of an evil connotation or context to it.
It does, yeah.
What I would do is I would probably call it like a guardian spirit.
Guardian.
But then you run the risk of getting close to the druid's realm. But anyway, instead of saying you command it to attack, it's basically a short duration AI. It lasts for X number of seconds. It can stun enemies. It can heal people in the group. It can buff. So based upon very, very simple to code parameters, you know, if there's an enemy nearby, stun them.
Yeah.
If someone's dying, heal it. If there's no more enemies, throw out a couple buffs and then poof, gone.
And that's a really cool idea as well, Lex. I'll expand on it as well. You could even go that far and add a subtle twist to this particular version of the Paladin, the what's it called, Strength of the Ancients, with the Call of the Ancients again. You could then take this and maybe Paladin Lexa decides to throw out a buff for the group with this Call of the Ancients. Maybe the Paladin Josh decides to heal the group with the Ancients, and maybe the Paladin Yanila decides to go and throw out some DPS towards the mobs of some sort. There's definitely a lot of room to add twists and ways to add that little unique toughness to the individual classes. And again, you're even going a bit further with this one, because the Night Hunter has to go and gather essences. With this, with the Strength of the Ancients path, you even have to you can even define yourself and your role differently. So now there's two Strengths of the Ancients looking for a group. I go and ask them, hey, what's your Call of Ancients do? Mine does dot damage. Mine buffs a group. Guess what? I'll take you both along. Boom, beneficial.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's definitely really some really cool concepts there.
Yeah. The second and third ones, or the power levels of that Call of the Ancients. The second was a Holy Ghost, and the third one was a Golem. And the Holy Ghost would drain the power of the enemy, and the Golem would deal crushing damage to the enemy, causing weapon natural attacks not to work until healed. So yeah, each one does do different things, which is great, as you say. What does yours do? What does yours do? Take both of them along, type of thing. I mean,
there's a quick mention in chat. As long as you are both okay with fighting over gear, I've always never understood the fighting over gear, because you're always going to have you always have DPS in the group, and you might have two different types of mages in a group, so they're going to be fighting over gear anyway, regardless. So why shouldn't the tanks, the healers, if you have two healers in a group, they mainly fight over gear, weapons and shields and stuff like that, and rings and jewelry. So it's
for as long as someone wants gear, people are going to fight over it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Number one, and number two, I think in any reasonably mature guild, it's healthy. But if you're going to have two plates in a group, you're going to say to the one plate, listen, I'm looking for X, I'm looking for Y, you're looking for Z. Fine. If it drops, you grab it. That type of thing. So if there's a level of maturity, I think it's worked out quite easily.
And again, to backtrack a bit on this, if we look at all these four different paths, if you will, they're all unique in their own way, and they definitely hold dear to the Paladin in general. When it comes, to the archetype itself, and it would be, I could see. I don't see any negatives from this, because this has always been the trouble with most of the MMOs out there. It's when they try and spice it up and add some twist to it when it comes to the AA trees and skill trees and you name it, whatever they've got. There's always going to be that flavor of the month, and with systems like this, I can't see a flavor of the month happening, because there's so much beneficial going on, and each class has their unique strengths, their unique weaknesses, within themselves. But the strengths definitely overweigh the weaknesses, and it adds for a unique play style. So rather than turning everybody into the hero of their MMO that they're playing, you pick your path that you go down, and you define your role, you pick your play style. You're kind of addressing that issue, that problem that people have. Everybody wants to be the hero. I understand that. Everybody wants to be the hero in their game, and be the one that carries the dragon's head back to town and gets cheered upon. And you're kind of fixing that problem with this system that we're addressing here, because you're giving enough room for people to have a unique way to play their desired class without really messing it up. Where it's got two paths you can go down. This one's better for that. This one's better for this. You got so many unique ways to go. And again, not every paladin's going to be the same. Not every cleric's going to be the same. Not every druid's going to be the same, and so forth and so forth. So the flavour of the month is going to be something that's going to take decades, if there ever will be a flavour of the month, to even figure out. Which is what we generally want. We don't want the
cookie cutter
situation. Exactly. And this definitely adds to that and gives room to explore. So with all of these unique paths that you've given, how would you perceive them in the world? What would they do? Are there different approaches to each individual? Or do they go to different houses, different paladins, different synergies, or would you spice it up and provide multiple ways for them to obtain these powers, these abilities?
Yeah, I definitely think that I would say quite similar to the monk. You would have different houses or different temples or faiths,
sects or something.
Exactly. That the initiate paladin could join. And from that they can choose the path that they want to walk. Yeah. And the path is something that may take years to achieve enlightenment through this path, but at least they'll have the abilities and the backing of the sect, so to speak, to achieve what they need to achieve. Yeah. And yeah, that's how I see it.
And these systems fit in well with the minor description or indication that Jop has given with the soft subclassing approach. But they've mentioned that basically you're going to have 12 abilities at your disposal, and when you're in combat you're going to have use of those 12 abilities, and that's it. You can't go and open up your spellbook and switch it out during combat and this, that and the other, but you will be able to switch out spells. You can have a lot more spells than 12 or abilities in your arsenal, and this fits right into that as well. This kind of touches on that soft subclassing that's been mentioned, where you might have the Night Hunter, Strength of Ancients, what's the other one, Defender of Light, and you've gotten yourself the Maester of Souls, and now you go out in the world. However you're going to go and find these spells, be it by going to the sects or synergies, or finding some vast deep cave and some tomb where you might, because I could see this being split up as well. Some of the ways to obtain these spells, maybe the Maester of Souls has to overcome some epic beast to obtain the Soul Harvest, or the Blight of Souls, or You Shall Be Judged ability. He might have to ward off some beast of sorts to obtain these abilities that he can then use. Obviously, it's not something he would have to do by himself. Maybe it's something the group can help him with, or a group, multiple groups of people. And then if you look at the Defender of Light, the Enforcer, Pulse of Faith, Shield of Reflection, I could see this being something where you might have to go on some long journey within your soul to obtain these abilities. Kind of like, you know, you set yourself on a long path where you're all by yourself, learning about the Pulse of Faith, the Enforce, the Shield of Reflection. And then you look at the Night Hunter.
And definitely an inner focus for that Paladin, ultimately.
And that also adds another time sink to the game. Another unique way to approach that path or whatever. It's not the same old, go to your trainer, put down some coin, learn some spells, you're done. You know, each one would be put on a different approach. Go on, Lex.
The thing with, like, you know, adding more flavor to how you obtain things, that's not just killing time. It's a chance to generate a story or craft an experience. It's the excuse that you need to give somebody an adventure that they'll remember.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's like never a bad thing.
Definitely not a bad thing at all. So there's definitely, you know, lots of ways to go. And again, guys, I just want to say these are just ideas, you know, that we're having on this. You know, there's a lot more we could add to this and talk about. We could take a complete different approach to this. You know, we would definitely like to see what you guys out there have to say and how you would approach something like this as well. You know, there's lots of room to advance on this. So
our way isn't the be all and end all. Believe me, if there's ways to do things different, there's these.
So one thing I do want to talk about is we've heard these classes or these archetypes or subclasses, paths, auras, whatever you want to call it. How would you see them differing from each other graphically? Because they're definitely very unique. They're very enlightened. You've definitely given it a lot of thought, and my mind's been going all over the place. I've been picturing all kinds of weird images of what the Paladin in that certain form or fashion would look like. And
well, I think that the for the Maester of Souls, I said basically the silent wailing souls get drawn into the Paladin continuously and fly around the Paladin's body and weapon. So you have these wispy type souls. I don't know if you recall in Ghostbusters.
I was gonna go. I was gonna go there, but I didn't want to because I was taking a slightly different direction. He's got that thing that he throws out and then he sucks them in. But I was also thinking about Scrooge, where he has like this ball and chain, basically. He's like the Punisher.
Okay.
A ball and chain, basically behind him.
Yeah.
Holding a ball and chain, basically. With the scent going up.
Oh yeah.
So what kind of?
Yeah.
Go on, Josh.
I was just going to say that, and weapons they would carry, and he would basically be playing with the type of unique relic in his one hand as he's walking along, type of thing, and these souls are basically chasing it around as he's walking. So yeah, that's how I see him.
So
but anyway.
So what about his armor, his look, his feel? Now, I picture, like, you know, I see this guy wearing a cloak of sorts, having a hoodie on. You can barely see his eyes. You know, you can just see the glimmer of his eyes popping out. He's got that shady look on him, you know, like. But his armor's very shiny when the robe lifts, like, you know, a blinding light comes out, but he's still got that shady look to him.
I think I think he has the multi-layered type of armor that just goes down his whole body.
Yeah.
As you say, it's quite shiny. It's quite plain in that regard. But as you say, the noticeable thing is that thick robe over the armor. So it actually will confuse the enemies, thinking that this guy's soft, but he's actually got plates underneath it.
And he whips off the robe, and it's blinding.
Yep.
And it's all in slow motion as well.
Can you imagine every time you go into combat, the paladin tank whips off this cloak, real dramatic like, and the entire game just slows down for just a split second. Everyone in the group's just going, "Oh God, not again!"
I just got an image of me, Bee Gees, staying alive.
By the way, staying alive. If you're administering CPR, that is the song to do it to.
Yeah.
Out there, so remember that song.
The more you know.
So that
Yes.
the defender of light is basically would be my atypical paladin.
Yeah.
The nice shiny armor, really neat and clean, and
Exactly.
Gold ink crests and stuff like that on it.
You could see him having some sort of a follower trailing behind him with a piece of cloth shining the boots whenever he stops.
That'd be actually pretty cool
they're taking off that speck of dirt off his armor type of thing.
That'd be pretty cool.
Stands. Yeah.
Walks into town and everybody starts going into a prayer and a bow.
Yeah.
The Night Hunter, is it's definitely a very interesting one. This would even be a type of paladin where I would see wearing lighter armor, not necessarily heavy metals.
Yeah, exactly. And I picture this paladin. It's kind of like a Norse type background, a Nordic type armor set on him. Where you've got these glowing etched runes running through the armor plates themselves, and he's kind of old school type of a paladin.
Yeah. In
my mind, type of a guy. And then strength of the ancients. The armor, I just see that it looks all beaten, weathered, and looks like it's going to fall apart in any second. But then you've got this like neon magic running between the plates themselves, keeping that armor together.
Yeah.
And it's radiating up and down the armor all the time, type of thing.
It's almost like it's an armor. It's an armor that basically fools the enemy. You think that hey, this is some beaten old guy, look at his armor. It's falling apart. He's an easy foe.
He's got these handlebar mustaches, so he looks like he's been through about 50 wars, basically.
I can see it now. It's like, it's a trash night.
And on that note, though, that brings us to next week's show, which will kind of touch on what we just talked about, appearance and gear show, where we'll be talking about the appearances of armor and the gear, etc., and even the appearance of your races, your characters, your classes, etc. That's what we'll be talking about.
Can we rename that to the Vanity Show?
if you want the Vanity Show next
Because
Friday.
I'm sorry, when it comes to my character, I am very vain.
But on the note of the Paladin, all those people out there that haven't been following us or keeping track, we have a competition going on this exact topic on the Paladin, I'm going to bring it up right now. It's the Welcome to the Light contest, because our very own Lexa basically challenged VR in the stream with Koopa Trooper, I think it was.
Yeah.
They were basically having trouble with the mini-boss in their stream, and they had to utilize some dev commands or shortcuts or glitches in the system to kind of overcome. So Lex challenged VR to do this in a legitimate way, and Jopper happened to be in chat during that challenge that he screamed out, and it was accepted by VR. And the very next day they did a stream with Hive Leader, and they executed the challenge with no fault whatsoever. And so we decided to come up with this wonderful t-shirt where we have Lexa hugging paladins, where he's kind of like, you know, I don't want to hug you, but hey, anyway. And to win one of these, we have 5 to give away. The number 1 winner, our favourite, will basically win a signed version of this, where Lexa, myself, and Josh will sign the shirt. And you have to be 18 years or over to enter. You have until June the 8th, 5:59 PM Eastern Time, to send your entry towards us at giveaway at pantheon-vot.com. A maximum of 2 entries per person are allowed to be submitted, and you have to make sure that it's PG-13 and not above. And what we want you to do is either do some Paladin cosplay, or write a short story on a Paladin and include the Direlord, the Scar Direlord Lexa in that story, or do a Paladin comic skit in video format, or do some awesome Paladin memes, or even come up with some really cool apology song to Paladins from Direlords in MP3 format, and you send those our way. Obviously, if you do a video, you can send us the link to that email address, and yeah, we will do the draw on this. Will be basically, I think that's the 15th of June. Then let me have a quick look. Yep, the 15th. The week after that is basically when we'll do the draw for the people that have entered, and announce the 5 lucky winners to win one of these shirts, and we'll get you those sent as soon as possible. So yeah, you know, you should be lucky. You should be lucky that I don't put up the apology video, right?
I know. I blame Joppa.
I think Lex is still trying to hack their servers to see if they weaken the mob for that evening.
So, Shy.
Well, they were 2 levels higher, but I still said that was acceptable when it was going on. So.
Well, actually, didn't they buff themselves or up themselves to level 22 to the equivalent of the mob? I think the mob was 20...
I don't remember. I don't remember if it was the equivalent. But I remember they said they bumped up 2 levels.
Yeah, they bumped up 2 levels, I think, and I thought that she was level 22, so they put themselves on an even scale. So anyway, Shy, are you there? Any questions from chat you have for us?
I am here and don't really have any questions. Just the usual when is the game coming out questions.
See, I knew nobody cared about Paladins. I didn't say it as an observation.
I think we'll get double the amount of viewers if we had a talk on bards or necros.
Definitely.
Well, what a little known fact is that while I'm the poster boy for the Scar Direlord, I'm actually really excited about bards as well, because bard will be my primary alt.
So basically, what's going to happen after we've gone through all these classes and speculated on these theories, we're going to look at the class reveals from VR. We're going to even go back and look at what we talked about back in 2016 on the base of these classes, kind of compare where we were then, where they are now, and have a look at what VR are actually going to be doing with these classes. So look forward to that, because, you know, they've basically just released in the main newsletter, the class reveal for the monk, the ranger. What was the other one? The monk, the ranger, and the
Rogue.
The rogue.
Mhm.
And it's some very juicy information, and I can't wait to get into those because it's actually something to build off and get a general idea on where
We
they're
have
going.
some kind of information to work with for a change.
Yep. So look forward to those. We might even squeeze those in sooner rather than later. We'll see. So, anything you want to add, guys, towards this discussion?
Nope.
No.
No.
This isn't exactly the topic for me, though I try.
Right. Then, so with that, guys.
Oh, actually, Scribble would like to know, is VOT doing any community events?
Oh yes. I forgot about that.
Maybe Tuesday at 9
the one
p.m.
that's-
Eastern.
As I say, the one that Scribble is hosting.
Yeah. Scribble's doing game nights, and basically it looks like he's done a poll and got a document out there, and we're doing game nights for the whole community, not just the VOT. Anybody can get involved, and if you want to get involved with their game night, we have a few games up for selection that we plan to dive in together as a community to help pass the time and get to know each other a bit better. And if you're interested in that, it's going to be the first game night. It's going to be on Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. For all the information on that, you can find it on our Discord server. So Zath, if you throw that in, you can join our Discord server. It's open for everybody, and you can then look at the game night channel, find all the information there that you need, and yeah, come hang out with us and play some games. And with that, we wish you all a wonderful
Merry
weekend.
Christmas.
Happy Memorial Day for those of us in the States.
Yeah.
And we'll see you
3-day
all
holiday.
next Friday for the Appearance and Gear show. And yeah, looking forward to the Vanity show. Sorry, the Vanity show.
The
next week.
Vanity Show.
The Vanity show next week.
It's the Shy Needs to Look Pretty show.
We should actually
Show me the shinies.
We should actually do a
That's
show
what it is,
on.
exactly.
We should do a show on shinies. Should there or shouldn't there be shinies in?
You really don't want me to go there, do you?
Really
Really don't want to get
It's
me
not even a
started, right?
question. Shinies are very important for people to run off and die.
I mean, it's the end of the show. You don't want to get me started on shiny.
Yes. Oh look!
Yes,
Get ready.
I
The
need
Ray Boss is getting ready to cast this big. Oh, something shiny.
Yeah, exactly. Ooh.
Yeah. Oh well. With that, guys, thanks for joining us. We hope to see you all next Friday. Have a great weekend, and yeah, thanks Lex and Josh, Chai, Zath, everybody out there. Have a good night.
Cheers, guys.
See you later.
Enjoy your holiday. Bye.